Good afternoon, everyone. This is Drew Camp, Director of Government Relations and Business Retention and Expansion at the Ames Chamber of Commerce, here for your Week 13 weekly legislative update for the Iowa State Legislature. A couple big things that we want to talk about today include appropriations bills and the tax bill, as well as tax increment financing, the backfill, the signing of Future Ready Iowa, and the Secure and Advanced Vision for Education School Infrastructure Fund. So jumping right into things, the appropriation bills, those are going to be one of, if not the biggest piece that we're going to be watching here towards the end of the session, because once we get those budget targets out of the appropriations committees, the big number, so to speak, as to what they're working with within the different budget categories, that'll really dictate what we see going forward with tax reform, because the two are really embedded and tied together at this point. You can't really have the tax reform amendment come out until we know what the budget numbers are. So we're hoping that we see something come out next week. We've thought now for the past 2 weeks we would probably see something as far as a tax amendment goes, but we're fairly confident next week we will likely see something due to the fact that we're going to need to see budget numbers, because they're going to want to get out of there, especially if the weather starts warming up and the farmers start feeling like they need to be getting to planting. But it's important to note that as far as tax reform goes, there are trilateral discussions going on between the Senate, the House, and the governor's office. So we hope that they will be able to come to an agreement on including corporate income tax reform in the governor's bill, in the governor's bill, which originally had only included individual income tax reform. So we'll continue to monitor that and hope to see both the appropriation numbers and the tax numbers, or the tax amendment, I should say, come out next week. With regards to tax increment financing, that's something we seem to be fighting every year down at the legislature. They really don't want to have to continue funding $60 million in backfill to the school districts for tax increment financing projects. So what they're looking at doing in the House Appropriations Committee is taking out the 540 school levy, which is the backfill piece, and then also taking out the 390 county levy as well, which would essentially mean that counties and school districts would, instead of being included in that 540 and 390 for about a $8.90 per thousand valuation in a tax increment financing agreement, they would then have to opt in, or essentially be convinced to be included in that project. Some people are rather skeptical that they would do that. That would obviously take some convincing on our part. We're against the bill. We're always against bills that amend TIF in this way, largely because it would inhibit the ability to do large-scale projects. So think if we wanted to do something major in the downtown Ames area, that could be a huge debilitating factor if those two levies weren't included in the tax increment valuation that would then be able to be put towards assistance on the project. So we're watching that bill very closely, as are all of our partners, and they're all against it as well. The the property tax backfill is another major issue that our school district, our city, and our county are watching very closely. They had a subcommittee on the bill on Wednesday, and it moved out of the House Appropriations Subcommittee. And what the bill would do, the House bill that they passed out of the subcommittee on Wednesday, is it would take $52 million of the $152 million in the property tax backfill out in FY19, which starts July 1st, which would mean that it would impact budgets that are already certified, which is problematic, which is what the House members have heard repeatedly from individuals in the school districts, cities, counties, and development community. But they're still looking at doing it in FY19, but that is up for debate as to if that will be the date that it would be put into effect. People don't want it done at all, but they are very adamant that if it does get done, it needs to be at the earliest in FY 2020, so they can plan for it in their budget process that usually goes on from about January to March. So we'll be watching that closely, because that bill does then ratchet down the backfill then in the outlying years, as it would in FY 2020 take another $25 million to $75 million, then it would take another $25 million in FY 2021, and then another $25 million in FY 2022 until it got to about $25 million, at which point they have talked about keeping it and stopping it there, because they want to have some money for smaller communities and counties who aren't seeing growth, who would be very, very adversely impacted if that money was to go away. So they are looking at that as a possibility as part of their bill, but we are against the bill that they're proposing to take away the backfill, and everyone has made it adamantly known that they should not even think about taking FY19. If they are going to look at doing it, FY 2020 is the first year they should even remotely consider if they are to look at doing something with that. The Future Ready Iowa bill, the governor's priority bill for workforce development, that was signed into law on Tuesday at the Future Ready Iowa conference by the governor, received a lot of positive press and attention. The one thing to note though is they still need about $18 million to be appropriated to the bill before it can actually be and have the impact that it was supposed to have as written into law and signed into law on Tuesday. With regard to the Safe School Infrastructure Fund, that remains the same way it has been for the last 2 weeks. It passed out of Senate Ways and Means. It continues to sit and await debate on the unfinished business calendar. We have no reason to believe it won't move forward, but we would like to see some action on that sooner rather than later. So looking ahead, next week we do know very likely that we'll see the large budget numbers and the appropriations discussion continue, and then hopefully that'll move us into a tax discussion, as well as we will hopefully see a tax amendment following a public hearing that they will have on the tax bill on Monday evening from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the Capitol. So hopefully we'll see a lot of movement, and I'll have lots of good things to report next week. But please do have a nice weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week for the weekly legislative update. Thank you.